My family demanded I buy a mansion for my golden brother's entire clan, but I quietly bought a modest home instead, and when they realized the truth, their screams and panic echoed through the driveway.
Navigating a world where I often feel like an afterthought in my own family. On the day of my brother's 16th birthday, it wasn't just a birthday, it was like some kind of mega event that you'd expect for someone famous, not just some high school kid. The kind of thing that makes you question if you're really part of the family or just a long-term house guest who's overstayed their welcome. My parents had been planning his birthday for weeks, whispering about party details and shock trips that they thought I didn't know about. They even enlisted his girlfriend to keep him busy the whole day so they could set up the surprise without him sniffing it out. I mean, they went all out. We're talking banners, a mountain of gifts, and enough food to feed an army of hungry teenagers. And yeah, it was all for him. The day of the Big Bash, our house transformed into Party Central. By 2 p.m., our backyard looked like some festival ground. There were strings of lights hanging from every possible point, balloons bobbing in the breeze, and a playlist pumping through speakers that could probably be heard a block away. They even rented one of those fancy photo booths, complete with props and a custom backdrop that read, "Happy 16th, champ." I guess subtlety was off the menu. As the guests started arriving, I hung back, trying not to get in the way. It wasn't like I was needed for anything. My parents were buzzing around, playing the perfect hosts. Mom was all smiles, flitting from one group to another, making sure everyone had what they needed. Dad was manning the grill, flipping burgers like his life depended on it. And there, in the middle of it all, was my brother, the star of the show, laughing and soaking in every second of attention. He had friends over that I'd never seen before, people who came up to him with big grins and even bigger presents. They talked about games, girls, and all the stuff I guess normal teenagers talk about. Watching them, I couldn't help but feel a pang of something. Envy, maybe, resentment, definitely. Later, as the sun began to dip below the horizon and the backyard lights cast long shadows on the ground, the highlight of the party kicked in, a surprise unveiling of a brand new gaming console, the PS5. It was the one thing he hadn't stopped talking about since it was first announced, and there it was, in his hands. As he looked genuinely shocked for the first time that day, I remember thinking how nice it must be to be the one who always gets what they want. How it must feel to have our parents bend over backward to make sure you're happy. And there I was, just a spectator in my own home, clapping along and putting on a smile, trying to look like I was part of the celebration. When it was time for the cake, everyone gathered around, singing at the top of their lungs. My mom brought out this huge, elaborate cake, something straight out of a bakery show, with icing that matched the colors of his high school. My brother blew out the candles, everyone cheered, and for a moment, just a brief second, I saw my parents looking at each other with these big, satisfied smiles, like they'd pulled off the greatest thing ever. The party eventually wound down and the guests started to leave, carting off their share of leftover food and memories. My brother, still buzzing from the excitement and probably the sugar, asked if he could crash at his friend's place for the night. I was in the kitchen pretending to help clean up when I overheard my parents agree without a second thought. "Just be careful and have fun," Dad told him with a pat on the back. That simple exchange was a gut punch. Just like that, he was free to go off and continue his perfect day. Meanwhile, I was stuck at home, cleaning up after a party that wasn't even for me, knowing full well that kind of freedom was off limits in my case. The next morning, my brother came home, his clothes reeking of booze, a crooked smile plastered on his face as he recounted his adventures to our parents, who just laughed it off. "Boys will be boys," I heard Dad chuckle, shaking his head. "Boys will be boys. But what about me? When did I get to be just a kid without the constant reminders that I wasn't as valued?" It was a question I'd asked myself a lot, but it stung a little more each time I thought about it, especially after seeing the lengths they'd gone to for him compared to the complete indifference they showed for anything that mattered to me. My birthday was a couple of weeks away, and deep down, I knew better than to expect anything close to what my brother got. But still, part of me hoped. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year they'd surprise me. Spoiler alert, they did surprise me, but not in the way anyone would ever want. The thing about living in a house where you're treated more like an afterthought is that every day feels a bit like you're just trying to stay out of the way. It's not like I was expecting fanfare and applause just for existing, but a little acknowledgement that I'm not just a piece of furniture would have been nice. Take mornings, for instance. Every school day, it was like a small battle just to get a decent breakfast. My brother, of course, had it different. Mom would make sure he had a hearty meal, eggs the way he liked, bacon crispy, and sometimes even pancakes if he was up early enough. Me, I was lucky if there were leftovers or, more often, just a cold bowl of cereal waiting on the counter. If the milk wasn't sour, I'd count it as a win for the day. And then there was the school drop-off. Dad would always drive my brother, saying it was on his way to work anyway. They'd chat about sports, what my brother was up to at school, his friends, the usual father-son stuff. Me? I walked, rain or shine, didn't matter. The school wasn't ridiculously far, but far enough that walking there every morning wasn't exactly a joy, especially during winter. Dad said it was good for my health, building character and all that. Funny how those character-building exercises never applied to my brother. Homework was another battlefield. My parents always had time to help my brother with his. They'd sit with him at the dining table, going over math problems or helping draft his essays. If he was struggling, they'd sometimes stay up late, making sure he understood everything before his tests. Me? I learned pretty early that Google was going to be my tutor. Asking for help usually got me a figure it out, you're smart enough, or a can't you see we're busy. So I did figure it out, mostly on my own. And let's not even start on the extracurriculars. My brother was signed up for everything he showed the slightest interest in. Soccer, basketball, guitar lessons, you name it. They made sure he had a chance to explore it. They said it was about broadening his horizons and finding his passions. I asked once if I could join a drama club that met after school. The answer was a flat no. Something about not having the time to manage all those activities and how someone needed to be home to help with chores anyway. Speaking of chores, guess who got the bulk of them? If you said me, you'd be right on the money. It was like I was the designated cleaner, dishwasher, and sometimes even cook, especially if both parents were working late. My brother? Well, his job was to keep his grades up and stay out of trouble, apparently. Everything else was too much of a distraction for his budding potential. Family outings were rare, but when they happened, they were all about what my brother wanted to do. Going to the movies meant watching whatever blockbuster action flick he was interested in. Eating out was choosing from his favorite restaurants. I can't remember a time when they asked me what I wanted to do or eat. It was like my preferences were just automatically sidelined. Even simple things like shopping for clothes turned into an ordeal. Shopping trips with my brother were these long, drawn-out affairs where my parents would fuss over him, making sure he got the trendiest outfits, the best shoes. When it came to me, it was always about being practical, choosing whatever was on sale and hurrying up because we didn't have all day. It wasn't just the big things. It was all these little moments that added up, making it clear that in my parents' eyes, I just didn't measure up the same way my brother did. I tried not to let it get to me, tried to brush it off as just the way things were, but it's hard not to feel the sting of rejection from your own parents. I remember one evening trying to talk to them about how I felt. I'd been gearing up for it all day, practicing in my head what I'd say. The living room seemed like neutral ground, so after dinner I brought it up. I told them I felt like they didn't care about me as much as they did my brother. I can still hear the dismissive tone in my mom's voice as she told me I was being ridiculously dramatic and that I should be grateful for everything I had. Dad didn't say much, just agreed with whatever Mom said and went back to watching TV. That conversation ended with me feeling smaller than I had before. It was a punch to the gut, realizing that my feelings were just another inconvenience to them. Nights were the hardest. Lying in bed, listening to the quiet of the house, I'd feel this hollow sensation in my chest. It was like I was mourning something I never really had, the warmth of a family that saw me as an equal member. I'd drift off to sleep on those thoughts, wishing for a different reality where I wasn't the second choice, the backup plan, or the afterthought. But wishes were just that, wishes. Reality was the bedroom I lay in, the house I walked through, and the family I lived with. And in that reality, I was always going to be the one looking in from the outside, trying to find a way fit into a picture that seemed to have no place for me. Despite the clear favoritism my parents showed towards my brother, our relationship somehow managed to avoid the typical sibling rivalry. Maybe it was because he knew deep down how unfairly I was treated, or maybe he just genuinely felt bad for me. Either way, he wasn't like the others. He didn't lord it over me that he was the golden child. Instead, he tried to make things right in small, subtle ways that I couldn't help but appreciate. It started with the little things, like the time I mentioned offhandedly that I liked a certain band. I didn't think much of it, just a comment during dinner about a song I heard on the radio. But a week later, my brother handed me a CD, the band's latest album. He'd bought it with his own money, just because he remembered I liked them. It was a simple gesture, but it meant the world to me. It was proof that someone in the house was listening, that someone cared about what I liked. There were the late-night snacks. I wasn't allowed to stay up late, unlike my brother, who seemed to have no curfew at all. But on nights when he knew I was up studying or just couldn't sleep, he'd sneak down to the kitchen and bring back a stash of snacks, chips, cookies, sometimes even a soda. We'd sit in my room, cross-legged on the floor, munching away as he told me about his day, the good parts and the bad. Those moments, those midnight confessions, they made me feel like I wasn't so alone in that house. And it wasn't just snacks or CDs. My brother had this way of including me that felt so natural, so brotherly. He'd invite me to hang out with him and his friends occasionally, even though I knew they weren't thrilled about having his younger sibling tag along. But he'd insist, "Come on, it'll be fun. You'll like my friends, they're cool." And sometimes I actually did have fun. I got glimpses of what it was like to be a part of his world, a world where I was welcomed and not just tolerated. His world was so different from mine, even though we lived under the same roof. He was popular at school, always invited to parties, always in the loop about whatever was happening. I, on the other hand, was more of a loner. I had a few close friends, but I wasn't part of any clique or group. I was just me, and most of the time, that felt like it wasn't enough. Not for my parents, not for the cool kids at school, sometimes not even for myself. But my brother never made me feel like I was less. If anything, he went out of his way to make sure I got some of the experiences I was denied by our parents. Like the time I really wanted to go to a concert. It was a school night, and I knew my parents would never let me go. But my brother, he came up with a plan. He told them he was the one who wanted to go, that it was important for some school project. Of course they said yes to him, they always did. And then he took me with him. We lied, said I was staying over at a friend's house, but really, we were at the concert, jumping and yelling to the music, just being normal teenagers for once. It was one of the best nights of my life, and it wouldn't have happened without him. He knew how much it meant to me, and he made it happen, even if it meant bending the rules a bit. That night, as we drove home with our ears still ringing from the music, I looked over at him and realized how lucky I was to have him as my brother. He might have been the favorite, but he didn't act like it. He acted like a brother should, protective, caring, and a little bit conspiratorial. Even with things as simple as sharing his gadgets and games, he was generous. When he got the new gaming console for his birthday, the one our parents had made such a big deal about, he didn't keep it to himself. He shared it with me, let me play whenever I wanted. He'd even sit and watch, giving me tips, cheering me on when I beat a level that had been giving me trouble. And when I really wanted those neon lights for my room, the ones all my friends were showing off on Snapchat, he was the one who talked our parents into it. They never would have agreed if I'd asked, but my brother, he had a way of getting them to listen, to agree to things they otherwise wouldn't. He told them it was for his room, that he wanted to try out something new with his decor. They bought it, and a week later he passed the lights on to me, winking as he said, "I don't really like them anyway, too flashy for me." It's weird, having this dual life where in one part you're ignored, and in another you're secretly supported, by the very person who's given everything you're denied. It created this bond between us. A bond that was about more than just being siblings. It was about understanding each other's struggles, about supporting each other in the ways we could. Living under the same roof but in completely different worlds had been my reality for as long as I could remember. Sure, my brother threw me scraps of normality every now and then, like sharing his gaming console or sneaking me out to concerts. But those moments, as precious as they were, couldn't completely shield me from the bitterness that was brewing inside me. It was like every kind gesture from him was just a reminder of what I wasn't getting from my parents. Each act of sibling solidarity was just a patch on the gaping hole of neglect I felt from the two people who were supposed to care about me the most. It wasn't fair, and that unfairness began to ferment into something dark and heavy, a resentment that settled in the pit of my stomach, growing heavier with each passing day. The whole thing might sound petty to someone on the outside. I had a roof over my head, didn't I? Food on the table, clothes on my back. But it's hard to explain how deep the hurt goes when the very people who brought you into this world treat you like you're a permanent guest in their lives. Not a family member, and not just any guest, a tolerated one at best. As my 15th birthday approached, the weight of my parents' indifference was especially crushing. I was another year older, another year stuck in this emotional limbo, and I couldn't help but think back to my brother's 16th birthday, the big party, the laughter, the way our parents had looked at him with so much pride and joy. Would I ever get that from them? A part of me knew better than to hope, but there was another part, a stupid, stubborn part that wanted to believe this year might be different. I remember lying in bed the night before my birthday, staring at the ceiling and listening to the quiet of the house. Everyone was asleep, but I was wide awake, my mind racing with a mix of hope and dread. What if they surprised me this year? What if they had something special planned and were just really good at keeping it a secret? Yeah, right, my inner cynic snorted at the thought. The morning of my birthday, I woke up with a nervous energy buzzing through me. I got dressed, my movements robotic and my thoughts scattered. I made my way downstairs, the smell of coffee and the sound of morning news drifting from the kitchen. My parents were there, acting like it was just another day, no happy birthday, no smiles, just the usual morning routine. I poured myself a bowl of cereal, the milk thankfully not sour today, and sat at the table, trying to gauge their moods. They seemed relaxed, chatting about some trivial thing or another. This was my moment. I decided I'd test the waters, see if they remembered, see if they cared. I was thinking, I started, my voice steady despite the jittery feeling in my stomach, since it's my birthday. Maybe I could go hang out with Jess after school. She planned something small, just a few friends. My mom looked up from her coffee, her expression unreadable. Oh, it's your birthday, right? Well, we thought about it, and she trailed off, glancing at my dad. My heart skipped. They thought about it? That was more than I expected. I dared to hope, just a little. We got you something, my dad chimed in, his tone light, maybe even a bit teasing. He got up and left the room, only to return a minute later with a large box wrapped in shiny happy birthday paper. My name was scrolled across it in bold letters. My heart was pounding as he set the box down in front of me. This was it. They remembered. They did something. I tore into the wrapping, excitement bubbling up inside me, only to find another box, and then another. Each box was smaller than the last, a Russian nesting doll game that left me more puzzled with each layer. Finally, the last box, small enough to fit in the palm of my hand, came into view. I opened it, my fingers trembling slightly, only to be met with a burst of glitter that flew up into my face. A glitter bomb. The laughter that followed wasn't the warm, joyful kind. It was hollow, mocking. My heart sank. This was their idea of a birthday present, a joke. My eyes stung, not from the glitter but from the tears that threatened to spill over. I looked up at them, my vision blurred, my voice shaky. Is this some kind of joke? My mom's face hardened. It's not a joke, it's creative. You should learn to take a joke anyway. Lighten up. My dad nodded, his face impassive. Yeah, lighten up. It's not like you need anything anyway. Their words were like slaps, dismissive and cold. I pushed the boxes away, my appetite gone. My day ruined. This wasn't just about a birthday gone wrong. This was a glaring confirmation of everything I felt. Neglected, unloved, unwanted. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the tile floor. Thanks for nothing, I muttered, my voice choked with emotion. I left the kitchen, left them sitting there, and walked out the door to school. The walk to school was longer that day, or maybe it just felt that way because of the weight I was carrying. Each step was a reminder of the gap between me and my parents, a gap that seemed to widen with every birthday, every dismissed feeling, every moment of indifference. By the time I reached school, I had made a decision. I couldn't keep doing this, couldn't keep hoping for something that would never come. It was time to start thinking about revenge, about making them feel even a fraction of the pain they'd made me feel. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. I needed to protect myself, to fight back in whatever way I could. Because if they weren't going to give me the love I deserved, maybe I could at least make them regret how they treated me. After the birthday disaster, my school day was a blur of anger and plotting. Each class was just background noise to the thoughts racing through my head. How could they? Why would they? The hurt from the glitter bomb fiasco was deep, but it sparked something in me, a fiery resolve I hadn't felt before. I was done being the victim. By the time the final bell rang, I had a plan. Not fully formed, maybe a bit reckless, but it was a plan nonetheless. I wasn't going to let them off the hook this time. They needed a wake-up call, and I was more than ready to be the alarm. Walking home, I rehearsed what I would say, how I would confront them. My heart pounded with a mix of nerves and excitement. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about claiming some respect, some acknowledgement of the pain they'd caused. I got home to find the house unusually quiet. My parents were both there, which was rare given their usually conflicting schedules. They were in the kitchen, looking like they were gearing up to start dinner. Perfect timing. Hey, I started, my voice steady despite the butterflies doing acrobatics in my stomach. They both turned, surprise etched on their faces. Probably didn't expect me back so soon. We need to talk, I said, closing the door behind me with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the silence. They exchanged a look. A silent conversation that I wasn't privy to. but I didn't care. I was going through with this. What's on your mind? My dad asked, his tone cautious. I took a deep breath. This was it. I'm tired, I began, my words clipped. Tired of being treated like I don't matter, like I'm less important than him. I gestured vaguely upstairs, where my brother was probably holed up in his room. My mom's expression hardened. Here we go again, always so dramatic. No, I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. Not this time. You don't get to dismiss me. Not today. I locked eyes with her, holding her gaze to show I meant business. I deserve better than a glitter bomb for my birthday. I deserve better than being an afterthought in my own home, and I'm sick of it, sick of all of it. The words tumbled out, fueled by every ounce of hurt and resentment I'd stored up over the years. There was a tense silence, then my dad sighed, running a hand through his hair. We thought it was funny. We didn't mean anything by it. Funny, I scoffed. Is that what you think this is about? A bad joke? I shook my head, disbelief coloring my tone. This is about how you treat me every day, how you've always treated me. My mom crossed her arms, defensive. We provide for you, give you everything you need. You're just ungrateful. Ungrateful? The word hit me like a slap. Ungrateful for what? Being ignored? Being second best? I laughed, bitter and hard. Yeah, I'm real ungrateful. The air was thick with tension, each of us caught in a standoff. I could see the confusion, maybe even a hint of guilt in their eyes. But I wasn't done, not yet. And you know what? I continued, the words coming easier now. I've kept secrets too, like the time I caught Mom kissing one of Dad's friends at my brother's basketball game. Remember that? I do. I watched the color drain from her face, watched as my dad's confusion turned to shock. What are you talking about? My dad asked, his voice low, dangerous. Oh, it happened. While you were both so busy being perfect parents to him, your wife was making out with another man. How's that for family values? My mom's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. She looked to my dad, who was staring at her with an expression I couldn't quite read. And Dad, I turned to him, my gaze cold. Let's not forget the adult movies I found on the computer last week. Really educational stuff, you know, great for a school project. Now it was his turn to go pale. That's enough, he said, his voice tight. You have no right. I have every right, I snapped back. You made me feel like I have no place here, so why should I play nice? Why should I keep your secrets when you can't even remember my birthday? The room was spinning with accusations and hurt feelings, a toxic cloud that had been brewing for far too long. I had laid everything out, all the cards on the table, and it felt terrifying, exhilarating and terrifying. Then I laughed like a maniac and ran out of the house. I still remember the shocked expressions after what I said. Now I'm at school, and I'm really scared of going back home. And even though the thought of what they might do after I revealed those things is scary, my anger is still not satisfied, and I want to hurt them even more. Should I just not go back? Or should I talk to my brother and ask his help? Maybe I should actually just go all the way and plot my revenge for all the times they treated me like. And just be done with it. After all, it's a guarantee that I'm going to be punished for my behavior, so why not do more harm and then get punished? Or maybe I should keep my mouth shut and just try to get through 3 more years of hell and focus on getting into a good college and building my own life. Let me backtrack a bit and fill you in on the chaos that's been my life lately. So, after my last post, I came home to find out that my parents had a huge blow-up. My brother, who was home at the time, filled me in because by the time I got there, the storm had already hit. My dad had been harboring suspicions about my mom having an affair, and something I accidentally let slip ended up being the last piece of the puzzle he needed to confirm his fears. That night, my dad didn't come home, and my mom was livid. In her anger, she took it out on me, grounding me indefinitely and confiscating my phone, effectively cutting me off from everyone. She was so furious, she even banned my brother from helping me out and threatened to take his phone too if he tried to pull any stunts to aid me. Despite the severity of the lockdown, thankfully, she didn't get violent, but I was pretty much left to stew in minimal contact with the outside world. Fast forward to now, I just got my phone back after what felt like an eternity. My dad decided to move out a few days back, saying he needed space to think things through, which has just added to the already heavy and gloomy atmosphere at home. After some time to reflect, I realized that plotting revenge or any kind of payback was just going to make things worse for me. Being isolated from everyone for over a week made me see that any more punishment from their side could really break me. So, I've decided to just keep my head down and try to get through the rest of high school as quietly as possible. Many of you reached out through DMs, and I'm sorry I couldn't respond sooner. Everything felt like it was crashing down, and I was barely keeping it together. The escalation at home was unbearable at times. My parents' arguments turned frequent and highly volatile, often breaking the silence of the night. It got so bad that there were nights when I was genuinely scared, sneaking into my brother's room where we'd both plug into the same pair of headphones, blaring music just to drown out the noise of their fighting. Now, with my parents living separately, there's this strange, tense quiet that's almost as bad as the arguments. I overheard my mom saying she's putting off the divorce because she thinks fighting for custody would be too much hassle, especially since my brother and I are close to becoming adults. They're planning to wait until I turn 18 to legally separate, which isn't too far off but feels like a lifetime away when every day is strained. I'm not even sure how to feel about all this. On one hand, it might mean fewer explosive fights, but on the other, it feels like my family is just disintegrating before my eyes. And right in the middle of all this was my 16th birthday. Yeah, that was a day to remember, but for all the wrong reasons. It's a birthday I won't forget, not because it was special, but because it marked the realization that nothing's going to be the same. It's tough, not going to lie. Some days are harder than others, and sometimes I feel like I'm just going through the motions, waiting for a day when things might start to look up. But sharing this with you all here helps. It makes me feel less alone, knowing there are people out there who, even though we've never met, genuinely care and understand. For now, I'm just trying to focus on the positives, like planning for my future and trying to find moments of normality amid the chaos. Thanks again for sticking with me through this. Your words of encouragement have been a huge comfort. Here's hoping I'll have some better news to share next time.